Okay. Hi, everybody, and thank you for coming back. We've got a full table tonight. We're very honored to have George's mother come and help us do this tonight. So thank you very much for being here. If anybody notices I swear less tonight, that'll probably be the reason. But last week, Andre had left another message. And Andre, I've already asked once before, for the kinds of questions you're asking, it's really difficult for me to just throw something out there as a single answer without any dialogue between us. So as many times as you've asked this type question, I'm going to try and again answer it quickly. But do please write to me. Anybody that wants to write to me, everybody that's ever written to me is I've written them back. And I have a relationship with them at this point in time, frankly. Most all of them. But oldsoup, OLDSOUPP @gmail.com. And I can explain this to you more clearly there, but what you're actually asking is in conflict with the teaching that we've been talking about for all this time, and that you've been listening almost since video 1, 2.5 years ago. I'm going to read your question again, and then try and give you some food for thought, even if you don't contact me. If you contact me, Andre, I chant about you so much, bro. You have no idea. Never met you. You've never met me personally, but you've continued to seek from me. And so I know we have a karmic connection. And that's the reason I have to take this time out, and everything I've got to do tonight, I've got to answer your question. So you asked again, how do you start practicing this Buddhism as someone who is skeptical, doesn't hold any metaphysical belief, God, soul, spirit, positive thinking, and so on, nor believe in fundamental Buddhist concepts like karma, for example? Can a pragmatic person still benefit from this practice? How should I start this practice? Okay, absolutely you can, because first of all, the way you would accomplish that, number one, is to understand that, again, when we talk about faith, and that's really what you're kind of rebuffing here, are all issues of faith. In tonight's Go Show, I'm going to talk about faith, and you're going to get sick of hearing faith, man. Okay, but you're constantly equating the word faith with the concept of Christian faith or Western kind of faith, where you are putting an absolute trust in something outside of yourself. We're talking about putting an absolute trust on something inside yourself. And I'm not talking about the Spirit of God or some weird shit like that. All right? I'm talking about the fundamental law that actually establishes the reality that all of us exist in. Okay? So unfortunately, the reality is that there's no reverse of this. There's a thing called substituting faith for wisdom. There's no such concept as substituting wisdom for faith in Nichiren Buddhism. It doesn't exist. It's not about wisdom for the sake of wisdom. It's wisdom of the Buddha, which is based on compassion and a desire for the salvation of all mankind. You're part of that, okay? So I completely understand where you're coming from on the believing in part, but do understand that for you to ultimately benefit, you have to establish faith. Now, how do you establish faith? By just believing for the sake of believing? No, not necessarily. I know from starting my practice around a lot of war wives. They were Japanese wives of American servicemen that had come to the U.S. And many of those servicemen that started practicing in order to prove to their wives that it didn't work. Okay? So they didn't really start chanting with any kind of faith. In fact, they were going to prove that chanting didn't work. Okay? But the really cool thing about this Buddhism, is that whereas even other sects of Buddhism have all kinds of do's and don'ts and rules and regulations, we only have the precept of the diamond chalice. We only have one precept, and that's to chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo with faith. So you've got to get to that first base of faith, and the teaching already understands the difficulty and the dilemma you're in, because the teaching's for everyone, and certainly in the course of everyone beginning to encounter this law, there would be some that would have to start from that point of not having faith, so to speak, as in belief or understanding. But the truth is that if you chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, that in and of itself is an act of faith. when anyone starts to chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, the tremendous faith involved in just doing that simple act is what creates the fortune for the benefit that they see, that's the reinforcement for them to continue. Okay? Is everybody with me?
Yeah.
You're all understanding what I'm saying, I know. So the point is that you say, how do I start? Okay. Without having to have belief or anything, you need to at least have respect. Okay? So respect this much of the teaching of Nichiren, okay? First, you must chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Are you even doing that? If you are doing that, then you're already expressing faith, even though you're saying, I don't believe in this or I don't believe in that. The reason you don't believe for this or that, frankly, at this point in time, is you haven't studied enough of it to really understand it. Now, for the last 2.5 years, almost everything we've studied has been out of Volume 1. Okay, Volume 1 are all the goshas based on faith. Okay, because this is the most fundamental teachings for you to understand as a practitioner of faith, someone aspiring for Buddhahood in your present form. If you want to get into all the technical goshos, the ones that are established in order to quantify and validate concepts that you may initially say, I don't believe in, but it's because you haven't read them yet. Start reading, okay? So again, if I don't hear from you again, I'll know that you didn't listen to what I'm saying, but you keep asking the questions, so I keep answering it. And I will continue to for as long as you ask them. There are 2 goshos then from Volume 2. Again, you can go to Writings of Nichiren Daishonin, nichirenlibrary.org, and go to Volume 2, and you'll see that there's Gosho number 185 and 186. And 186 on reciting the Daimoku of the Lotus Sutra is one of his 10 major writings. So that's really a totally get down with the theoretical element. Those people that are trying to advance in faith are really not associating, so they're not so concerned about theoretical elements. They're trying to actualize. They're trying to become Buddhas in their present form. That's why we don't deal with all that theoretical stuff. But the one before that is explaining the causation of the 10 worlds. Okay? You need to understand, why does this work? Okay? It's going to spell out why it works. What's the premise for Nam Myoho Renge Kyo as just a single phrase being able to create a benefit or effect in your life? All right? And then follow that up and just read on through to the Daimoku of the Lotus Sutra. And if you'll write to me at oldsoup, OLDSOUPP, with any questions as you go along, I would be thrilled to be there every step of the way with you, bro. Every step of the way. Because I know you're seeking mind. I hear it. I feel it. I sense it. I chant about you to the Gohonzon. It's impossible. I won't stop until you make it. Okay? I won't give up on you if you won't give up on me. All right? So we'll start there. That was done. Andre. All right? Tonight we're going to be talking about something toward the end of the Gosho. Pardon me. He's going to be talking about the 20-line verse. Okay? Does anybody know which chapter of the Lotus Sutra that's in? 20-line verse. Very important one. Okay, because you have to understand that the Lotus Sutra is written for not only the people that follow after the former and the middle day, okay, but it's a blueprint for ultimately what the Daishonin's teachings ended up being established and clarified as the Buddhism of sowing. Okay, so Nichiren, we're all supposed to try and be of the same mind as Nichiren. Okay, we don't try to be of the same mind as Shakyamuni Buddha. All right, frankly speaking, those of us that chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo are not disciples of Shakyamuni Buddha as far as our practice in the school that we're in, the Soka philosophy, are concerned. All right, so it's not to say that we dishonor or disrespect Shakyamuni. It's just that Shakyamuni qualifies in the Great Collection Sutras that in the after the first 2,000 years, his teaching is going to stop having efficacy, and that in the 5th 500-year period, the teaching for the latter day will come forth, and that's what Nichiren said that his advent was all about. So, although we've read this before, maybe more than once, maybe several times, I'm going to take the moment just to read it very quickly out of the Lotus Sutra, because this is the basis of how we practice. Our practice is based on the encouraging devotion chapter of the reality of faith, rather than the peaceful practices chapter that follows it. Okay, it's on page 232 of the Threefold Lotus Sutra. Okay, you can also find this again on www.nichirenlibrary.org. It's been wonderfully provided by the SGI as open source for anybody in the world to utilize. Translated by Burton Watson, by the way, one of the most renowned translators in the 20th and 21st century. Starts out on page 232. This goes straight into the verse section, and the verse section is always a rephrasing of what was conveyed in the prose section that preceded it. Everybody knows that, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, it says, "We beg you not to worry after the Buddha has passed into extinction." So this is basically talking about a time after the Buddha is no longer around, all right? This is not for his disciples at the assembly, all right? He says, "We beg you not to worry after the Buddha has passed," because he's just exhorted all of them to do all this after he's out of here. "We beg you not to worry. After the Buddha has passed into extinction, in an age of fear and evil, we will preach far and wide. There will be many ignorant people who will curse and speak ill of us and will attack us with swords and staves, but we will endure all these things. In that evil age there will be monks with perverse wisdom and hearts that are fawning and crooked, who will suppose they have attained what they have not attained, being proud and boastful in heart. Or there will be forest-dwelling monks wearing clothing of patched rags and living in retirement, who will claim they are practicing the true way, despising and looking down upon all humankind. Greedy for profit and support, they will preach the law to white-robed laymen and will be respected and revered by the world as though they were arhats who possess the 6 transcendental powers. These men with evil in their hearts, constantly thinking of worldly affairs, will borrow the name of forest-dwelling monks and take delight in proclaiming our faults, saying things like this: these monks are greedy for profit and support, and therefore they preach non-Buddhist doctrines and fabricate their own scriptures to delude the people of the world. They'll try to defame us. Because they hope to gain fame and renown thereby, they make distinctions when preaching the sutra. Because in the midst of great assemblies they constantly try to defame us, they will address the rulers, high ministers, Brahmins, and householders, as well as other monks, slandering and speaking evil of us, saying, these are men of perverted views who preach non-Buddhist doctrines. But because we revere the Buddha, we will bear all these evils. Though they treat us with contempt, saying, you are no doubt Buddhists, you are all no doubt Buddhists, all such words of arrogance and contempt we will endure and accept. In a muddied kalpa, in an evil age, there will be many things to fear. Evil demons will take possession of others. It's the quote from tonight that I read this over. And through them curse, revile, and heap shame on us. But we, reverently trusting in the Buddha, will put on the armor of perseverance in order to preach this sutra. We will bear these difficult things. We care nothing for our bodies or lives, but are anxious only for the unsurpassed way. In ages to come, we will protect and uphold what the Buddha has entrusted to us. This, the world-honored one, must know. The evil monks of that muddied age, failing to understand the Buddha's expedient means, all those teachings prior to the Lotus Sutra, which is what is being read to you right now, failing to understand the Buddha's expedient means, how he preaches the law in accordance with what is appropriate, will confront us with foul language and angry frowns. Again and again we will be banished to a place far removed from towers and temples. All these various evils, because we keep in mind the Buddha's orders, we will endure. If in the settlements and towns there are those who seek the law, we will go to wherever they are and preach the law entrusted to us by the Buddha. We will be envoys of the world-honored one, facing the assemblies without fear. We will preach the law with skill, for we desire the Buddha to rest in tranquility. In the presence of the world-honored one and the Buddhas who have gathered from the 10 directions, we proclaim this vow. the Buddha must know what is in our hearts. Okay, so now going to the lecture tonight, which is the first section, the first of 3 segments of Letter to the Brothers. Or, pardon me, Letter to the Brothers, yes. Okay, we already know who the 2 brothers are, the Ikegami brothers, Muanaka and Muanaga. And we already read the entire Gosho before, so I'm going to skip rereading the section because it's going to be repeated each time in little segments. Okay, so we're going to start on page 61. I'm very happy that we did, pardon me, thank you, dear, that we did read the whole Gosho, because there's one, President Keita doesn't even touch on page 364, or 494. And before I start, I want to read from 494 to keep in mind as we read the rest of his lecture. The Lotus Sutra, it states here, this is the Daishonin speaking to the brothers. The Lotus Sutra is the eye of all the Buddhas. It is the original teacher of Shakyamuni Buddha himself, the Lord of Teachings. If one discards one word or even one brushstroke of the sutra, the offense is graver than that of one who kills one's parents 10 million times over, or even of one who sheds the blood of all the Buddhas of the 10 directions. Okay? So remember that as we go through and we read this. Starting out then, I think I shot this down to just Nimpoika. Good. Nimpoika. All right, we ready?
Yeah.
I'm going to take a drink of water. Thank you for your patience. Page 61. Lecture. The great undertaking of Kosen Rufu is a struggle against devilish functions. We cannot afford to cower at their onslaughts. If we allow them to defeat us, humanity will be forever impeded in darkness. This was the powerful declaration of my mentor, second Soka Gakkai President Josei Toda. Words that carry an important message. Words that carry an important message for posterity. Mr. Toda never retreated a single step in battling malicious or destructive forces that sought to block the flow of Kosen Rufu. He fought on, determined to put a stop to them. The happiness of all humanity was his goal. Because he wished to rid the world of suffering and misery, he strove tirelessly to vanquish all negative forces that inflicted pain and torment on people. To the very end of his life, he led the way as supreme commander of Kosen Rufu. In particular, 1957, the year before Mr. Toda's death, a year that saw many of his aspirations for our movement reach their culmination, the Soka Gakkai was fiercely buffeted by a host of obstacles, which Buddhist scriptures refer to as the 3 obstacles and the 4 devils. In addition to harassment and persecution in the form of the Yubari Coal Miners Union incident, where they were going to fire people because they were members of Soka Gakkai, and the Osaka incident, which when President Ikeda got thrown in jail for supposedly election fraud. Illness struck Mr. Toda, the organization's president, more severely than ever before. That's why I can't let illness bother me. But President Toda always discerned the true nature of things and events from the perspective of the Buddha and the law. So he didn't view them from the perspective of just his own common mortal life. He viewed them from the perspective of the enlightened aspect that he was propagating through spreading the teaching of Buddhism of sowing as it had been requested by the Daishonin, but had never been done by anybody before. He says, on that occasion, he said, we are about to realize the goal of 750,000 household membership. So it is only natural that devilish functions will vie with one another to obstruct our progress. The devil of illness now plaguing me, however, only qualifies as a minor demon. If I let such insignificant devils defeat me, I can never accomplish Kosen Rufu. Undaunted, Mr. Toda faced the onslaughts of devilish functions. He also said, my being sick like this is a major instance of lessening karmic retribution. I am convinced that because of this illness, the immense difficulties that the Soka Gakkai would otherwise have to face are being reduced. So what does that basically tell you? He viewed his life as the Buddha, okay? And he viewed his mission as the mission of a thus come one. Someone that was in this world for the function of expressing something to a wide number of people beyond just himself. So this is all about, he did not begrudge his life. He understood that if he took on this kind of an objective, he was bound to meet difficulty. Everyone that follows this path will meet difficulty. So if you have the guts to do that, don't be shocked when it comes up. That's what I'm going through. I'm not shocked by it. It's already in the teaching. He says, true to his powerful conviction, Mr. Toda overcame his health threat. To celebrate his recovery, he held a special dinner on his 58th birthday on February 11th, 1958. Having won a victory over the devil of illness, Mr. Toda handed the baton of Kosen Rufu to his useful successors on March 16th. And then, having fulfilled his noble mission in this world, he passed away with complete peace of mind on April 2nd. So he lived to be 58 years old. Do you understand that? Why did he only live to be 58? As much as anything, because he did not begrudge his life. He didn't say, I need to go get rest. I can't do this. This is too stressful. Right? He didn't worry about that. That's the key. That's the key. The same thing holds true for Nichiren. All right? This year, 2009, with this is first written, marks the 51st anniversary of my mentor's death, a day when I, as his loyal disciple, made a vow to dedicate my life to repaying my profound debt of gratitude to him. The second column, page 62, 5 eternal guidelines of the Soka Gakkai. This might drive you a little crazy, Andre. In December 1957, while President Toda was battling illness, the Soka Gakkai finally reached a membership of 750,000 households, a goal he had pledged to achieve during his lifetime. At the headquarters leaders meeting that month, announcing the fulfillment of his vow, Mr. Toda presented his beloved fellow members with what later came to be known as the 3 eternal guidelines of the Soka Gakkai. Guideline 1, faith for a harmonious family. 2, faith for each person to become happy. 3, faith for surmounting obstacles. Each of these short guidelines encapsulates an important purpose of faith and the essential spirit with which we should pursue our Buddhist practice. My mentor entrusted me with realizing all of his plans and visions. So after becoming 3rd Soka Gakkai president in May 1960, I decided to reaffirm these 3 guidelines in the New Year's speeches I gave in both 1961 and 1962. I knew that if we lost sight of the fundamental purpose of Buddhist practice Mr. Toda had taught us, we would risk being defeated by devilish functions, resulting in apathy, stagnation, and ultimately the disintegration of our faith, which is what happens to most people that quit chanting. They develop apathy, they think they know everything, they think they know enough, they stop progressing in faith because they think there's really no point in it, they don't see a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Stagnation, which is that loss of the seeking spirit that occurs with the apathy, and then ultimately the disintegration of their faith, which is why they don't get their prayers answered anymore. They no longer see power in chanting. It's easy to sway them. I've got problems, they don't get mitigated. It's not the fault of the Gohonzon or their Daimoku. It's their life. All right? In 2003, after the start of the new century, I again reconfirmed the essence of President Toda's guidelines and added 2 new ones. Number 4, faith for health and long life. And 5, faith for absolute victory. Together, they form 5 eternal guidelines, guidelines that express the cherished hope and conviction of President Toda as well as my own. Comprising the vital ingredients for attaining Buddhahood in this lifetime, attaining Buddhahood in your present form, these guidelines are infused with our prayer that members everywhere will, undefeated by any obstacle, dedicate their lives to Kosen Rufu and achieve a state of absolute happiness. So what did that just say? Did any of those guidelines talk about attaining Buddhahood? I'll read them again. Faith for a harmonious family. Faith for each person to become happy. Faith for surmounting obstacles. Faith for health and long life. And faith for absolute victory. Did any of us talk about attaining Buddhahood? No. Every single one of them did.
No.
Okay, every single one of them did. That's why he's saying comprising the vital ingredients for attaining Buddhahood. You can't be the Buddha in your present form if you don't have the power in your life to have a harmonious family, or to have the desire for everyone to be happy, or to surmount all obstacles regardless of what they might be, or to live through the example of as healthy and long a life as is possible, or to achieve absolute victory over every obstacle. All right? Letter to the Brothers, in the middle of the first column of page 63, is a writing that my mentor and I studied together as a crucial text for learning the correct attitude in faith. In it, the Daishonin teaches his followers to triumph boldly over all devilish functions. Not to put up with them, not to just keep hanging in there and hanging in there and hanging in there, to boldly triumph over them. That means to defeat them. That doesn't mean to learn how to live with them. Understand, there's a huge difference between the two of those. Some people will continue to suffer and suffer and suffer, and they call that faith. That's not faith. That's not faith. Faith is winning. That's why he said faith for absolute victory. Putting up with shit is not victory. It's putting up with shit. People get that confused all the time. They think they have faith because they don't go Titan. They're Titan if they're not advancing. You know, if they're not advancing in their perception and understanding of what the practice is for, if they're not demonstrating actual proof, then they're not really practicing anymore. They've been overcome by apathy, stagnation, and they're in a process of disintegration. That's what this whole lecture is going to be about. Okay? So, good. Whether they, in it, Nichiren Daishonin teaches his followers to triumph boldly over all devilish functions, whether they appear as the 3 obstacles and 4 devils, or as the workings of the devil king of the 6th heaven and attain Buddhahood. He wants them to boldly triumph over all devilish functions and attain Buddhahood. Hyphen, boom, boom, forget the middle, and attain Buddhahood. He urges them to do so by striving in faith, Andre, with the same commitment as his and uniting solidly with their fellow members. So having the same mind as Nichiren is a key here. All right? It's not just following your organization. It's a more personal level of commitment and a more personal level of effort than just going to a meeting occasionally and opening the Butsunan in the morning and chanting 15 minutes because that's what you're supposed to do, reciting Gongyo, and you're done for the while until you go back. There's no seeking spirit involved in that. That's apathy, stagnation, and it's going to lead you to disintegration. Trust me. This writing could indeed be called the basis or source of the 5 eternal guidelines of the Soka Gakkai. Is everybody with me?
Yes.
I'm not trying to be too over the top, but this is really important for you to understand for what it says, not what you think it might say. He says, unless we win in the struggle against devilish functions, so it's important. Why? Not just for us. Unless we win in the struggle against devilish functions, we cannot achieve true harmony, happiness, health, and longevity, or victory. Goals that form the heart of the 5 guidelines, and that are the basis of Kosen Rufu. In this and the next 2 installments, let us study Letter to the Brothers and learn the formula for total victory that Nichiren outlines for his followers in this writing. The top of page 63. Great obstacles are the direct path to transforming our karma and attaining Buddhahood. Okay? And so, what does that correlate to what I already just read? When President Toda talked about saying, my being sick like this is a major instance of lessening karmic retribution, that's what that title is talking about. This is about the capacity that we have in our life to lessen our karmic retribution. And that occurs by overcoming great obstacles. Okay? When those great obstacles occur, it's not because, shit. It's, oh, good. Now I can transform them and lessen my karmic retribution and attain Buddhahood in this lifetime. Okay? With me? So back to the Gosho. The Lotus Sutra, this is from page 493, a letter to the brothers. The Lotus Sutra is the heart of the 80,000 teachings and the core of the 12 divisions of the scriptures. The Buddhists throughout the three existences attain enlightenment because they take this sutra as their teacher. And I read you from 494 where he's qualifying even Shakyamuni Buddha. His teacher is the Lotus Sutra. If you read the Lotus Sutra, you'll see that that's exactly what it says. It was the teacher of his father. His father taught it to his 16 sons. Shakyamuni was one of them. I'll start again, sorry. The Lotus Sutra is the heart of the 80,000 teachings and the core of the 12 divisions of the scriptures. The Buddhists throughout the three existences attain enlightenment because they take this sutra as their teacher. The Buddhas of the 10 directions guide living beings with the teachings of the one vehicle as their eyes. I shall begin by explaining a few points concerning the recipients of this letter and the situation they were facing. The letter, page 63, second column, mid-column. The letter is addressed to the brothers Ikegami, Muinaka, and Muinaga. It is not clear when they took faith in Nichiren Daishonin's teachings, but they are generally thought to have been among his earliest followers. The brothers belonged to the Ikegami clan, a prominent samurai family that served as a leading construction contractor for government building projects. Their father, Ikegami Yasumitsu, an ardent supporter of Ryokan, chief priest of Gorakuji Temple, a temple of the True Word Precept School, and an ultimate enemy of just an absolute enemy. He's the one that got Heino Seimin to send the Daishonin to Tatsunokuchi. He was supposed to have a hearing the next day. They spirited him off in the middle of the night to cut off his head. All right? Opposed their faith. So again, the Daishonin is assuming that Ryokan probably has something to do with Yatsumitsu's attitude towards his Buddhism of sowing and his son's faith in the Daishonin's teaching. Okay? It's a direct line. That's the fundamental darkness infecting the father's life. Chief priest of Gorakuji Temple, a temple of the True Words Precept School, opposed their faith and had disowned Muinaka, the older brother. Disownment in feudal society was a severe sanction. It not only meant loss of the right of succession, but also being deprived of both economic foundation and social standing. Moreover, in this particular case, since only the elder brother had been disowned, there was now a chance for Muinaga to become his father's heir, if only he would be willing to give up his faith, because that was the condition. It wasn't, I'm going to disown the older brother and now younger brother, you get it. It's younger brother, both of you, younger brother, you might be disowned too if you don't give up this Nichiren stuff. If only he would be willing to give up his faith. This was the cunning tactic by the father to weaken his younger son's resolve. Nichiren wrote this letter in response to the news of Muinaka's disownment. Throughout its pages, he teaches the Ikegami brothers that the obstacles confronting them are the inevitable consequence of their steadfast faith in the Lotus Sutra, and that the path to attaining Buddhahood ultimately lies in battling devilish functions in accord with the sutra, as the sutra teaches, as I just read to you from the 20-line verse. You with me, right? Hence, in the opening paragraph, Nichiren emphasizes the superiority of the Lotus Sutra to all other teachings of the Buddha, all the other sutras. The Lotus Sutra, he explains, is the heart of the vast body of sutras known as the 80,000 teachings, and the core of the Buddha's teachings referred to generally as the 12 divisions of Scripture. He also says that not only have all Buddhas throughout time and space attained enlightenment themselves by taking this sutra as their teacher, but that they also guide living beings toward that goal by expounding the teachings of the Lotus Sutra. The Buddhas themselves always teach the Lotus Sutra to teach people how to attain Buddhahood, how to reveal the Buddhahood that's already innate in their life. We can surmise it is because of the gravity of the brother's situation that Nichiren begins by outlining the fundamental significance of faith in this way. He teaches that to deeply recognize the supreme value of upholding the Lotus Sutra results in a conviction and joy that produces the strength to overcome any hardship. He then discusses from various perspectives the serious consequences of abandoning faith in the Lotus Sutra. Forsaking this teaching constitutes such a grave offense because the Lotus Sutra is the eye of all the Buddhas. It is the original teacher of Shakyamuni Buddha himself, the Lord of Teachings. And I read that to you right from 494. In other words, to discard one's faith is to discard the ultimate teaching, which could not be viewed as anything but slander. And in that process, there's nothing other than bad retribution that's going to come from it. And so be aware of that. Don't stop practicing no matter what. Don't be swayed by other evil people. They're not evil. The function of evil is being expressed in their life and what they're trying to do to you. They're already going to suffer from that. Don't let them take you with them. All right? On a deeper level, abandoning the Lotus Sutra amounts to rejecting the fundamental principles the sutra embodies, such as universal enlightenment. Can women attain Buddhahood in any other sutra? No. Can evil people? No. All right? I could go on down the list. You all know what I'm saying. It's only the Lotus Sutra that creates the grand equality of all living beings. Yes. All right? On a deeper level, abandoning the Lotus Sutra amounts to rejecting the fundamental principles the sutra embodies, such as universal enlightenment, respect for all people, and harmonious coexistence. Doing so, therefore, causes the three poisons, greed, anger, and foolishness, which prompt people to act in opposition to the ultimate law, to intensify in people's lives until ultimately darkness dominates and they are destined to wander through evil paths of existence. They become ekchantikas. They could become vehicles for the devil of the sixth heaven. Fundamental darkness. Bottom of page 64, second column. The Daishonin seeks to strongly impress upon the Ikigami brothers an understanding of the Lotus Sutra's paramount importance, explaining that to discard one word or even one brushstroke would constitute a serious offense. Pardon me. In this caution, we can sense his immense compassion to do everything in his power to dissuade the two brothers from abandoning their faith at this challenging crossroads in their life. Why? Because he doesn't want to lose two of his main guys? Or even one of them? Why? Why can we sense his immense compassion to do everything in his power to dissuade the two brothers from abandoning their faith at a challenging crossroads in their lives? Because this is 3 obstacles, 4 devil stuff here, guys. Everybody's going to encounter it, and anybody that gives into it is going to go backwards, like I just said, in a way that's very difficult to come back from. Okay? That's the immense compassion. He doesn't want them to experience hell. All right? He wants them to attain Buddhahood in their present form. They will never be able to do that, nor will they be able to do that in their next lifetime, nor will they be able to do that in the following lifetime. He's going to clarify all that. This is very serious stuff. Page 65, top of this first column. It is difficult to encounter a true teacher. From the Gosho, page 495, from volume 1. Moreover, it is extremely difficult to meet a person who expounds this sutra exactly as the sutra directs. It is even more difficult than for a one-eyed turtle to find a piece of floating sandalwood, or for someone to hang Mount Sumeru from the sky with a fiber from a lotus stem. Continuing, President Akeda. Having discussed the significance of the teaching of the Lotus Sutra, or the mystic law, Nichiren Daishonin next focuses on the importance of the people who expound and practice the Lotus Sutra. Us. Ultimately, not even the most exalted teaching can amount to anything unless someone puts it into practice. This is as indicated by Nichiren's pronouncement, the law does not spread by itself the law does not spread by itself. colon. Because people propagate it, both people and the law are respect worthy. What's that concept of? Nimpoika. Okay? The law cannot be expressed, cannot be utilized for the sake of attaining Buddhahood unless there are human beings engaging and practicing and utilizing it. Okay? So the law can't exist really in any meaningful way other than like a law of gravity kind of a way, which is not, that's sort of like thunder and lightning and all the atmospheric disturbances that actually cause that versus God's, that sort of thing coming down. The bottom line is that we are the thing that actualize the teaching of the Lotus Sutra. Understand that. Buddhas actualize the teaching of the Lotus Sutra. That's why the Lotus Sutra is the teacher of all Buddhas. It's the teaching that reveals to them they are Buddhas and allows them then to follow the path that accords with that perception and understanding. From the Buddhist Dictionary on page 479, oneness of person and law, a principle established by Nichikan, the 26th chief priest of Taisakaji Temple in Japan, with regard to Nichiren's teaching, indicating that the object of devotion in terms of the person and the object of devotion in terms of the law are one in their essence. The law is inseparable from the person and vice versa. Okay, and if we're of the same mind as Nichiren, we're also inseparable in that same context. Don't think that this is talking about a special guy that has a special connection. Because he has that connection, we have that connection. That's the point. All right? The law is inseparable from the person and vice versa. The treatise, the Treasure Tower chapter of the Lotus Sutra states, if one upholds this sutra, one will be upholding the Buddha's body. This is the original teacher's body until he manifests in the latter day. This means that the Lotus Sutra is the Buddha's body, that is, the Buddha person, and the teaching he expounded are one and inseparable. Nichiren revealed and spread the law of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo and inscribed it in the form of a mandala known as the Gohonzon, to enable all people in the latter day of the law to attain Buddhahood. For this reason, he is regarded as the Buddha of the latter day of the law. This is the object of devotion in terms of the law, or the physical embodiment of the eternal and intrinsic law of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo that Nichiren realized and manifested within his life. You understand? This is a physical embodiment of that reality. In his reply to Kyo, Nichiren writes, the soul of Nichiren is nothing other than Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. This means that Nichiren realized Nam-myoho Renge-kyo as the origin and basis of his life and embodied it as a mandala. So when you chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, you have a direct personal relationship with the original teacher. That's the cool thing. That's why you can circumvent everything else. You don't have to master the 80,000 teachings. They don't mean anything to you, really, if you follow the expedient of the correct teacher. Nichiren also writes in the same reply, I, Nichiren, have inscribed my life in Sumi ink, so believe in the Gohonzon with your whole heart. Once again, faith is the thing that unlocks this truth. Ultimately, Nichiren's life embodied the principle of the oneness of person and law, as does the Gohonzon, the object of devotion he established. And since the Gohonzon is inseparable from your life, you do as well. All right? My little PS there. It is exceedingly rare, continuing on page 65, it is exceedingly rare to encounter a person who expounds the Lotus Sutra exactly as the sutra directs. Nichiren explains that meeting so rare a teacher is even more difficult than such singular or impossible feats as a one-eyed turtle finding a piece of floating sandalwood or someone hanging Mount Sumeru from the sky with a fiber of a lotus stem. The person or teacher mentioned here is the votary of the Lotus Sutra, a reference specifically to Nichiren, the source of the Gohonzon, the object of devotion for Mappo. It is something truly extraordinary to have encountered the Daishonin in this Sahe world during this evil age of the latter day, which is defiled by the 5 impurities. Likewise, Okay, so if you were in 13th century Japan, you have pretty good karma if you practice with the Daishonin as your teacher. All right? Likewise, it is equally difficult for those living in the world after the Daishonin's passing to meet an authentic leader of Buddhism who propagates the mystic law, the essence of the Lotus Sutra, exactly as he teaches. For me, there is no greater joy than having been born in the Sahe world and becoming the disciple of President Toda, a great teacher of Kosen Rufu. When we first met, I instinctively knew I could trust him. It's the same way I felt with Mr. Matsuoka. Okay? He is the reason I decided to practice Nichiren Buddhism. Same for me with Mr. Matsuoka. And I tell you constantly, I'm constantly referring to him for a reason. You're listening to him when you hear me talk. In exchange of letters with the well-known Japanese novelist and poet Yasushi Inoue, I wrote, I first learned about Buddhism from Josei Toda. Faith did not come first. My encounter with him did. Mr. Inoue responded as follows to a letter in which I described meeting my mentor and the decisive impact it had on my life. He responded, I was very moved by your letter. Not often are human beings granted the opportunity to encounter a person of such scope as Mr. Toda was, to find a person whose ideas coincide with one's own, to show devotion to such a person, thus to plot one's life path, and then always love and respect that person. Last paragraph on page 65, second column. The mentor-disciple relationship is a precious treasure in life. From the standpoint of Buddhism, it is a supremely noble bond. It has not, had it not been for the mentor Tanesaburo Makaguchi and his disciple Josei Toda, the first and second presidents of the Soka Gakkai, the revival of Nichiren Buddhism in the modern age would never have taken place. Truth. Wasn't happening on the basis of how Nichiren Shoshu had it going down. They were the smallest school out of all the 5 schools. This is because the law only comes to life, and this is the key, going back to the same point. This is because the law only comes to life in the lives of those who practice it. And its real worth only manifests through their behavior and actions when they practice it correctly and advance to the last moment of their life as the teaching actually teaches. Unless there are people who correctly uphold the Buddhist teaching, who practice true to its spirit, nothing of value will be created through that teaching. It will be ephemeral. It will be lost at some point in time. Having a teacher in faith is vital to practicing Buddhism correctly. And it is by disciples acting with the same spirit as their mentor that the law is transmitted. The mentor-disciple relationship is a cornerstone of Nichiren Buddhism. Our Soka network, and I consider myself part of the Soka network even though I don't practice with the Soka Gakkai and haven't for over 20 years. Our Soka network, okay, because I have a mentor-disciple relationship with someone that happens to be kind of like majorly from the Soka Gakkai, okay? And that's all I read, that's all I try to practice by, okay? But again, do understand that the whole key is what you do with your life. Do you actually manifest the promise, or you show it as just a promise because you never get there? You never overcome that obstacle that you put up with for year after year after year, though you think that's faith. Okay? You show actual proof. Our Soka network is now spread. By the way, I haven't heard him speak about himself as the mentor at all yet. Have you? Have you heard him say anything about I'm the mentor? You should all regard me as the mentor. Daisaku Ikeda is the mentor. You're all the disciples. No, it's as I said a few weeks ago. You'll know who your mentor is when you meet him, because they'll inspire you to attain Buddhahood. And there will also be a commitment in your heart that's not like it is with other people. They'll keep you going in those hard times. What they said will keep you going in those hard times. And you will encounter hard times. And unfortunately, most people don't make it through the hard times. They didn't study enough to be ready for the hard times. They got their shit blown away because they even met hard times. They want peaceful practices. That's for the former and the middle day. We're latter day of the law badasses. We do encouraging devotion. We do 20-line verse practice, like Nichiren. Our Soka network is now spread throughout the world, transcending differences of the language and ethnicity. Because without this Soka network, Nichiren Shoshu wouldn't have any non-Japanese members, for sure. Okay? And ethnicity? No way. Okay? Because they're racists. Period. Most Japanese people at heart are. All right? It's a fact. It's ingrained in a millennia of reality. Okay, you understand what I'm saying. Our Soka network has now spread throughout the world, transcending differences of a language, so we can be preaching this and talking about this to people from all over the world, and it doesn't matter what they look like. Millions of members today are making dedicated efforts to expound the sutra exactly as the sutra directs. To embrace and carry on the noble heritage of mentor and disciple and advance together with the SGI is to lead a truly sublime and meaningful existence. All who do so would surely earn Nichiren's highest praise. And you do when you're in front of the Gohonzon. Going on to page 66, second column. Beware of negative influences. Since this is from the Gosho, from page 495. Since this is so, believers in the Lotus Sutra should fear those who attempt to obstruct their practice more than they fear bandits, burglars, night raiders, tigers, wolves, or lions. Almost sounds like a line from The Wizard of Oz. Even more than invasion now by the Mongols. So he said, more than anything else you could be afraid of people that might take you off of this path. Who is it that we as practitioners of the Lotus Sutra should really fear? Nichiren Daishonin says that rather than fearing bandits, thieves, or wild animals, we should fear those who attempt to obstruct our practice and our faith. To whom then does this specifically refer? In the paragraphs immediately preceding this passage, the Daishonin cites the examples of respected Chinese Tang Dynasty Buddhist teachers such as Su Wen and Shan Wei, who held fast to the Buddhist provisional teachings rather than embracing the Lotus Sutra. He notes that each of these learned men had at some point recognized the Lotus Sutra's superiority, but in the end had foregone upholding faith in this sutra. The root cause behind their rejection, he asserts, is their having been led astray by someone who was an evil influence, meaning an evil friend or evil teacher. Those who attempt to obstruct one's practice are known as negative influences, which is what I've been trying to talk about for the last 2 weeks. What makes them so frightening is they can corrupt people's minds and destroy their faith. If practitioners of the Lotus Sutra allow themselves to be swayed by negative influences, to be deceived by evil teachers, thereby losing their commitment to the correct path of faith, they cannot attain the Buddha way, and they will have been the victim of an Ikchantika, having won that battle. Conversely, if practitioners, at the top of page 67, first full paragraph, conversely, if practitioners remain steadfast in their commitment, never giving up, mugiwashi. Conversely, if practitioners remain steadfast in their commitment, what's the commitment? To never give up. They can eventually, through the power of faith, surmount even the greatest difficulties. It is really true, as Nichiren often says, that the heart is most important. To forge the inner strength to withstand negative influences, we must have the wisdom to discern that they are devilish functions and courageously battle them. If we just think we're a little unlucky, or we don't understand why these things are occurring as we advance on the path of our faith, our lifetime of practice, we can be taken sort of like without being aware or being prepared. So continuing with more from the Gosho. Faith is a struggle against the workings of the devil king. Okay? Faith is there for the purpose of you being able to defeat these devilish functions. Your faith is necessary and required because those devilish functions will appear. If you don't have the faith that's capable of surmounting them, they will defeat you. That's why faith is important, not because of a fan club. I want everybody to believe because I want everybody to believe. No, belief is the only way you're going to get through the shit you're going to run into. I'm approaching 50 years, let me tell you, there's a lot of shit you can run into. All right? This world is the domain, going back to the Go Show. This world is the domain of the devil king of the sixth heaven. All of its people have been under the rule of this devil king since time without beginning. All of its people have been under the rule of this devil king since time without beginning. Not only has he built the prison of the 25 realms of existence within the six paths and confined all humankind within it, but he has also made wives and children into shackles and parents and sovereign into nets that block off the skies. To deceive the true mind of the Buddha nature, he causes the people to drink the wine of greed, anger, and foolishness, and feeds them nothing but dishes of evil that leave them prostrate on the ground of the three evil paths. When he happens on persons who have turned their hearts to goodness, he acts to obstruct them. Those are page 495 and 96 from volume 1. Continuing with the lecture, second column, page 67. This world is the domain of the devil king of the sixth heaven. All of its people have been under the rule of this devil king since time without beginning. Goyaku Jintingo. This is, Kuan Ganjo. This is an important passage expressing Nichiren Daishonen's keen insight into the true nature of devilish functions. I have read this passage countless times since I started practicing Nichiren Buddhism, engraving it deeply in my heart. In this and the following passages, and by the way, when Daisaku Ikeda says that, you should put a little star there like I did, because if he felt it necessary to read it multiple times and engrave it in his heart, I would hope you'd have the wisdom to understand he's making a point to let you know you probably should too. In this and the following passages, Nichiren indicates that the workings of the devil king of the sixth heaven are the evil influences that we should fear most as practitioners. First, he declares that this world, means the Sahe world in which we live, is the domain of the devil king of the sixth heaven. This is because the devil king, reigning as he does over the threefold world from the summit of the world of desire, and we won't get into all that, but that's technically what it's based on, has ruled people's lives since time without beginning. Kuan. The devil king represents negative forces that manipulate at will the lives of others, that obstruct good, and that cause people to fall into evil paths. Devilish functions, and you should look up devil king of the sixth heaven in the dictionary, really, if you want a good understanding of that. Devilish functions deprive, it's actually there marked already, I just don't have time to read it. Devilish functions deprive believers of the Lotus Sutra of the benefit of their Buddhist practice and cut off the flow of wisdom in their lives. Let me say that again. The devil king represents negative forces that manipulate at will the lives of others, that obstruct good, and that cause people to fall into evil paths. Devilish functions deprive believers of the Lotus Sutra of the benefit of their Buddhist practice and cut off the flow of wisdom in their lives. That's how the devils are able to defeat them, even though they chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo to the Gohonzon. Do you understand? That's how people can go Taitan. Do you understand? They didn't get suddenly a pass card because they started practicing, because they chant. They destroy the roots of goodness people have cultivated. In other words, what they were able to establish through their efforts is negated by this influence, causing them to transmigrate through the six paths of the threefold world. That means they don't ever get into learning, realization, bodhisattva, or Buddhahood. They're stuck as Christians. No. The forces of the devil king also devise various schemes to hinder the progress of the Buddha's forces. The Daishonin lists 3 specific examples of the insidious workings of the devil king. 1, making wives and children into shackles. 2, making parents and sovereigns into nets that block off the skies. 3, causing people to drink the wine of greed, anger, and foolishness to cloud the true mind of their Buddha nature. These three types of hindrances corresponded to three obstacles: karma, retribution, and earthly desires. In the many momentous persecutions that beset him, Nichiren was actually frightening the negative forces personified by the devil king of the sixth heaven. Did you understand what he just said? In the momentous persecutions that beset him, Nichiren was actually frightening the negative forces personified by the devil king of the sixth heaven, because he wasn't succumbing to any of them. They took him to Tasanakuchi, said, the Hachiman, it's your ass if they pull this off. Got to the sands, come on, do it. They freak out, come on, hurry up. Don't forget, this was his attitude always. You can't kill me. All right? In another writing, he says, the devil king of the sixth heaven has roused the 10 kinds of troops, and in the midst of the sea of suffering of birth and death is at war with the votary of the Lotus Sutra to stop him from taking possession of and to wrest away from him this impure land where both ordinary people and sages dwell. The devil king, commanding his 10 armies, wages battle to prevent the votary of the Lotus Sutra from gaining influence in the Sahe world. And if the votary should succeed in spite of all these attacks, the devil king will still make every effort to wrest back control. Page 68, bottom of the first column. Fully aware of this, Nichiren declares, it has been 20 or more years now since I have found myself in that situation and begun the great battle. Not once have I thought of retreat. In other words, his life was a continuous struggle against the forces of the devil king. Kosen Rufu will forever entail an unremitting struggle between Buddhahood and the negative functions inherent in life. Let me grab that last sentence one more time. In other words, his life was a continuous struggle against the forces of the devil king, as will yours be if you're going to attain Buddhahood in your present form. Kosen Rufu, which is something we're accomplishing now. Nichiren died 700 years ago. The Bodhisattvas of the earth have come to do this. Those are the guys that we're talking in the 20 verse thing. In other words, Kosen Rufu will forever entail an unremitting struggle between your Buddha nature and the devil of the sixth heaven. That's what that just said. Between Buddhahood and the negative functions inherent in life. The SGI is the organization that has inherited the true spirit of Nichiren Daishonin. As a result, the more dynamically our noble Soka movement has grown, the more intense have been the onslaughts of the devil king and other negative forces. President Toda instructed, fight fearlessly against devilish functions. Don't let them cause mischief. Don't ever give in to them. He, together with his mentor, first Soka Gakkai President Tanesaburo Makaguchi, I guess that's why he wouldn't come out of prison. Okay? Both great leaders of Kosen Rufu had an utterly selfless commitment to spreading the mystic law, bore the full brunt of all persecution. They fought the devilish nature of authority and staunchly protected their fellow members and the Soka Gakkai organization. As the third president, I have striven with exactly the same spirit. The first 3 Soka Gakkai presidents dauntlessly battled the 3 obstacles and 4 devils and the 3 powerful enemies and triumphed over them. And I don't care what your attitude is, that's a fact. Page 69, first column. Going back to the Gosho, recognizing negative influences. Daishonin says on page 496 of volume 1, he is determined to make believers in the Lotus Sutra fall into evil. He's talking about the devil king. But if he is unsuccessful, he tries to deceive them gradually by luring them toward the Flower Garland Sutra, which resembles the Lotus Sutra. He starts to confuse them with other teachings that aren't as difficult to comprehend or as difficult to practice, so that they'll go backwards. But going backwards after you've encountered the Lotus Sutra is slander. That's why we're not allowed to do that. Okay. Which resembled the Flower Garland Sutra, which resembles the Lotus Sutra. This was done by Tzu Xun, Shi Yin, Fa Zhang, and Chen Kuang. Then Xie Xiang and Xing Chuan were the evil companions who craftily deceived believers in the Lotus Sutra into falling back into the Wisdom Sutras. Similarly, Xuanzang and Suyin led them toward the Profound Secret Sutra, while Shen Wuwei, Shinkang Chi, Pukun, Kobo, Jikaku, and Chisho deceived them into following the Mahevachana Sutra. Bodhidharma and Huiko caused them to stray into the Zen school, while Shantao and Honen tricked them into believing the Meditation Sutra. In each case, the devil king of the sixth heaven possessed these men of wisdom in order to deceive good people. This is what the Lotus Sutra means when it says in its 5th volume, evil demons will take possession of others, which was in the 20-line verse that I read to start out the evening. Page 69, first column, bottom of the page. The devil king of the sixth heaven resorts to any and all means to prevent those who believe in the Lotus Sutra from attaining Buddhahood. As a simple illustration of this, Nichiren Daishonin cites the actions of the priests of various Buddhist schools, asserting that they seek to gradually deceive believers by luring them away from the Lotus Sutra with something that resembles it. He writes, in each case, the devil king of the sixth heaven possessed these men of wisdom in order to deceive good people. As examples of such men of wisdom, Nichiren lists many high-ranking priests revered within the different Buddhist schools of his day. Because they led sincere practitioners astray, he says, they represent evil companions or evil teachers and epitomize those ruled by the workings of the devil king. This is what is meant by the passage in Encouraging Devotion, the 13th chapter of the Lotus Sutra, evil demons will take possession of others. Since these are eminent priests respected in society, people fail to discern their true nature. On the contrary, they esteem these misguided individuals and prize their teachings, allowing poison to penetrate deeply into their lives without realizing it and ultimately losing their true minds. That's how they lose that battle. This causes them to turn away from the Lotus Sutra and even denigrate it. This is the frightening outcome of a society in which people have succumbed to negative influences. People's normal sensibilities at some point become numbed, and the very fabric of society starts to decay. Yet people cannot understand the cause for this. The votary of the Lotus Sutra endeavors to teach people the truth about the poison that has deeply penetrated their lives. But those he seeks to teach, being deluded, perceive him as a villain. Nevertheless, using the power of words and reasoning based on the Lotus Sutra, he strives to reveal the ugly face of slander of the law and expose for all to see the true nature of erroneous teachers and other negative influences. This is the struggle described in the 20-line verse section of the Encouraging Devotion chapter. In this passage from Letter to the Brothers, the Daishonin unhesitatingly names the founders and eminent priests of the various prominent schools of his day, openly denouncing them as the main culprits undermining people's faith in the Lotus Sutra. He did not fear criticism or abuse. We even find him proclaiming in other writings, "Let others hate me if they will, and let them say what they will," from Embankments on Faith. His unshakable commitment to resolve show him to be a true votary of the Lotus Sutra, because without this resolute spirit, one cannot battle the negative forces inherent in life, personified by the devil king of the sixth heaven. Okay? Do you get what he's coming to here? He's saying that Daishonin called out all these other guys by name. And he was not afraid to call them out when he knew they were wrong. So when correct teachers do the same thing, they're doing exactly what Nietzsche did. So let me continue. Bottom of page 70, first column. President Toda, too, took an uncompromising stance toward evil priests and other negative influences, people whose lives were ruled by the workings of the devil king of the sixth heaven. And those committing the gravest offense were the corrupt and degenerate members of the Nichiren Shoshu priesthood, the very ones who were supposed to be upholding Nichiren's teaching. He never minced words with such priests, letting them know in no uncertain terms just what he thought of them. He castigated them for having turned their backs on Nichiren's teaching during World War II, putting the Shinto talisman when you're not supposed to hold anything equivalent or higher than the Gohonzon. And for insulting and deserting President Makaguchi at the crucial moment, because they all went, yeah, he's trouble, when instead of standing up for him when he went to prison. The behavior of those who would undermine, because he's doing shakabuku. They're not teaching shakabuku, okay? He's a troublemaker. Yeah, he's not listening to us either. Do understand, Nichiren Shoshu was doing things to mess with Soka Gakkai from the beginning. This did not start with anything that had to do with Nikken and Daisaku Ikeda. It culminated at that point. That's what happened. It had begun many, many years prior to that. Second column of page 70. The behavior of those who would undermine and destroy the correct teaching can never be condoned. Can never be condoned. So you never can just let it slide. This spirit is an essential aspect of Nichiren Buddhism. Defeating fundamental darkness through the power of faith. Andre. The great demon from the Gosho, the great demon of fundamental darkness, can even enter the bodies of bodhisattvas who have reached near perfect enlightenment and prevent them from attaining the Lotus Sutra's blessing of perfect enlightenment. How easily can he then obstruct those at any lower stage of practice? Up to this point, Nichiren Daishonin has clarified that evil friends or negative influences that obstruct people's faith in the Lotus Sutra are personified by men of wisdom possessed by evil demons, and that these influences are actually the workings of the devil king of the sixth heaven. But if they are people of wisdom, how then can the devil king of the sixth heaven take possession of them? The reason is that they are not defeated from within, but from, the reason is that they are not defeated from without, but from within. They are defeated by the devilish nature known as fundamental darkness innate in life. It's been there since Kuan-Ganjo. In another writing, Nichiren states, fundamental darkness manifests itself as the devil king of the sixth heaven. All people have fundamental darkness in their lives. All people have fundamental darkness in their lives. The Daishonin says that it also exists even in the lives of Buddhas. Therefore, even in the case of bodhisattvas at the stage of near perfect enlightenment, the fundamental darkness in their lives can activate the function of the devil king and prevent them from reaching the stage of perfect enlightenment, or Buddhahood. If this is so for bodhisattvas at this stage, then it must hold true all the more for us ordinary people. The devil king of the sixth heaven, oh, you refilled it, didn't you? Pardon me. The devil king of the sixth heaven is the fundamental negative impulse that resides in the depths of people's lives. This devilish nature or negativity gives rise to the desire to control others or even take others' lives and to cause destruction and war. To conquer this devilish nature, we need to bring forth our inherent Dharma nature or fundamental nature of enlightenment, which exists along with our fundamental darkness. Toward that end, it is vital that we continue striving in faith, practicing Nichiren Buddhism ourselves and sharing it with others. Practicing Nichiren Buddhism ourselves, legitimately practicing it, and sharing it with others. In one of his lectures, President Toda commented on the devil king of the sixth heaven being inscribed on the Gohonzon. On our Gohonzon, it's Devadatta, represents that. Being inscribed on the Gohonzon, the devil king of the sixth heaven is depicted on the Gohonzon. So when we pray to the Gohonzon, do understand this, we're not praying to the fundamental darkness aspect of Devadatta. We're praying to the future enlightened existence of what I forget what he's called. It's in chapter 10. You know, Devadatta has a prophecy of enlightenment by Shakyamuni. Oh, you didn't know that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, he attains Buddhahood. Everybody attains Buddhahood. Baby, that's the whole point. Evil people, everybody. As long as they have faith in the Lotus Sutra. That's why it's the sutra. And why to go backward on it is a big deal. In one of his lectures, page 71, first column, bottom. In one of his lectures, President Toda commented on the devil king of the sixth heaven being inscribed on the Gohonzon. The devil king of the sixth heaven is depicted on the Gohonzon. The devil king of the sixth heaven is depicted on the Gohonzon. This is President Toda talking. So when we pray to the Gohonzon, the devil king obeys the Gohonzon. The devil king will issue orders keeping the leaders of his devilish forces in check. The original enlightened potential of the devil king, who was swayed by fundamental darkness, is manifested through the Gohonzon. The original state is Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Encompasses all other things, even fundamental darkness. You get it? All right. Indeed, all entities depicted on the Gohonzon display their innate dignified attributes, their enlightened Buddhahood aspect, attributed with dignified attributes when illuminated by Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, when illuminated by your Daimoku. Okay, do you understand? Everybody's with me, right? Okay, continuing, he went so far as to say the devil king of the sixth heaven then changes for the first time into an entity that helps and benefits others. These remarks embody a profound principle that is at the heart of Nichiren Buddhism. It's the simultaneity. You became enlightened. Of cause and effect. In the record of the orally transmitted teachings, Nichiren states the single word belief is the sharp sword in which one confronts and overcomes fundamental darkness or ignorance. And that's why you got to get to this point, my brother, Andre. As these words indicate, the sharp sword of faith allows us to defeat fundamental darkness. This means persevering. What is faith, though? Is it just believing? Is it like being a part of a fan club? No. This means persevering and challenging ourselves in faith, which means it means to never give up and to have this determination that we will change poison into medicine. This means persevering and challenging ourselves in faith throughout our lives. Not for the first 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years. Till the moment of death. It means seeing devils for what they are and constantly bringing forth the fundamental nature of enlightenment, your innate Buddhahood, from within. Through faith that grows stronger day by day and month after month throughout your life, as Nichiren did, we can, at a fundamental level, win over the workings of our darkness or ignorance. This is why it is important to have a mentor in faith to give us correct direction. President Toda often told me, if you are a true disciple of mine, then you must carry on in my footsteps to the end without fearing hardship. You must never be defeated. We're almost there, folks. Day after day I have fought on, just as my mentor instructed, and I have overcome all devilish functions. The mentor-disciple spirit is a powerful driving force for defeating any form of devilish function. By contrast, those who lose sight of this spirit and forget their debt of gratitude to their mentor will become increasingly consumed by fundamental darkness until they eventually turn into subjects or followers of the devil king. To remain fearless no matter what happens, to refuse to succumb to darkness or negativity, this is the spirit of faith needed to battle devilish functions. With this spirit, we can definitely prevail. This is the secret to a victorious life. Returning to the Gosho one last time, middle page 72, first column. Overcoming the three obstacles and four devils in order to attain Buddhahood. Not to just get rid of them because they're unpleasant. They're there to allow you to attain Buddhahood. You beat them, you got there. The devil king of the sixth heaven, the Gosho says, takes possession of the bodies of wives and children and causes them to lead their husbands or parents astray. He also possesses the sovereign in order to threaten the votary of the Lotus Sutra, or possesses mothers and fathers and mothers and makes them reproach their filial devoted children. Nichiren Daishonin states that workings of the devil king also manifest as opposition from parents, from partners and children, and even from the secular authorities in order to obstruct the practice of those who uphold the Lotus Sutra. Now, what is he talking about there, though? Is he saying that your wife is in a bad mood and suddenly she's like, a manifestation of the devil king? No. He's talking about circumstances of close relationship where the other person is someone who has a problem with what you're doing. And it isn't enough for them to allow you to just go ahead and do it. They are constantly trying to pull you away or to make comments that make you doubt. Okay? And that happens with wives, children, husbands, fathers, mothers, employers. It can happen in a myriad of ways. All right? Even secular authorities, as President Akeda says in the second sentence on page 72 in the second column, in order to obstruct the practice of those who uphold the Lotus Sutra. No doubt the lines, the devil king possesses fathers and mothers and makes them reproach their filial devoted children, struck a powerful chord with the Ikegami brothers. This was because their predicament was brought about in large part by the scheming of the priest Ryokan of Gorakuji Temple, a temple in Kamakura, and other negative influences. In addition, Nichiren says that their father, Yasumitsu, has succumbed to the influence of the devil king of the sixth heaven, who was attacking them in a bid to obstruct their faith. Therefore, the Daishonin tells the brothers that they must discern the true nature of these devilish forces and must on no account acquiesce to them. In the letter to the brothers and many other writings, Nichiren offers unstinting guidance and encouragement to disciples being pressured to choose between faith and filial devotion, or other obligations. True filial devotion is to attain Buddhahood by following the supreme Buddhist teaching and to guide one's parents to eternal happiness, because they get to come with you when you do that, in terms of the influence on their karma in the future. The Ikegami brothers carried through with faith exactly as the Daishonin taught and splendidly triumphed over the obstacles confronting them. Today, as the world grapples with an unprecedented economic crisis, he's not talking about now, but in 2009, the 2008 crash had just happened. He says, today, as the world grapples with an unprecedented economic crisis, obstacles of all kinds appear. Therefore, it is crucial that we win in our hearts, chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo through everything. We must make faith for overcoming hardships the foundation of our lives. When we make faith for overcoming hardships the foundation of our lives, we can definitely transform the negative into something positive in accord with the principle of changing poison into medicine. We can also definitely transform our karma, attain Buddhahood in this lifetime, and open the path of Kosen Rufu even wider. Wow, I made it before 9:30. Thank you.
Thank you.